everyone to the local area council meeting. Can I particularly welcome back Terry Clark, who I know has had a very bad time at home with his bereavement. Good to see you, Terry. And our sympathies. For myself, can I say I had my COVID jab and my flu jab this morning. I'm not 100% and I'm feeling a little bit dizzy, so do give me a little bit of leeway, won't you, if I get something wrong. I'll get shouted at by Rebecca here. I'll do my best. Welcome to everyone from Highways England and from Communities Together. Thank you. Now we'll go through the agenda. Apologies for absence, Rebecca. Have we any apologies?
Yes, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Bridget, Councillor Swinbank and Councillor Watson. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others that are known? That's it, actually, isn't it? Yes, it is. Minutes of the meeting are held on Thursday, 23rd of September, have been circulated. Can these be confirmed as a true record, please?
Move acceptance, Chair.
Thank you. And seconded by Councillor Hardy. Public question time. Well, I had a question, actually there were three questions. Oh, I do beg your pardon, I've jumped one. Thank you for reminding me. You can tell I'm not 100% today. Disclosure of members' interests. Are there any disclosures of members' interests? Councillor Mather, thank you.
Chair, it's just a note on the presentation about winter maintenance.
Yes.
I am an approved winter maintenance contractor in my own business, which I have been for 12 years.
Right.
So just to note that.
That is noted as a declaration of interest. This is a decision-making meeting, but nevertheless your interest is noted.
Thank you.
Should you want to ask any questions, etc. Yep, thank you. Oh, we're all here, and we can now, item 4, public question time. I have had 3 emailed questions which came to me just virtually before I sat down, but in my view they are not appropriate questions for the local area council. As chair, I believe they are full questions that could only be answered at full council, and therefore I have forwarded those questions to the appropriate officers. That's my view as chair. Thank you. I think some of you were copied in, not all of you. Petitions? Any petitions?
Yes, Chair. So we have 2 petitions that have come in. So one of the petitions was houses for permanent residents at Beadnell Sea Houses in Northumberland.
Yep.
So this was to provide social and affordable homes for permanent residents in line with prices and reflect wages in the area. This has been closed on change.org and submitted to the Chief Exec, and it has 689 signatures in total and approximately 150 who have provided a full postcode exceeding the threshold. So a report will come in time with that.
We haven't had any, there's no lead petitioner who's intended to speak on that.
No.
No, thank you.
No. And we have another petition that's come in yesterday. So that's a petition against inappropriate development in Beadnell. So it's been received and the report will go to the petitions committee as this is a wider planning issue rather than local area council.
Yes,
and
I've
that's
seen
it,
that.
Chair.
Thank you. That noted. I'm sorry about the noise outside. Windows are closed, there's nothing I can do about it. Condition of what we'll have to put up with for a while, I think. We'll move on to item, missed anything, item 6. Local services issues and to receive a verbal update from technical services and neighbourhood services in attendance about any key ongoing and future planned local services work. Who is going to speak? Graham, you have the floor. Press your thing, won't you?
Yes, keep me right. Okay, just a quick update from Highways. I'll speak up so you can hear me
Yes,
above
please
that.
do. I'm sorry about the noise.
So the 2 surfacing gangs continue at some pace, and we've now completed 26 out of the 31 major resurfacing schemes in Northern area for this financial year. Completed schemes since last area council included Bamborough to Glororum, the Hepburn Junction to Hayhope, south of Chillingham, the latest phase of the Harwood Road, Elsdon to the A696. That was a preparation scheme for next year's surface dressing programme. Scheme at Swallen Mill, scheme at Millfield, Main Street Spittal, I believe is complete now, and the Rock Midstead. That one I think is also complete. We've also carried out some localised work at Blakelaw Road in Alnwick.
Very fine resurfacing.
Some footpath work at Carrick Close in Berwick, and also footpaths at Branxton. Plus, we are now on some much needed repairs on the U4035 near the Simonside Hills. Coming up in the next few weeks, we've got Station Road, Embleton, Brunton Village. Actually, I think that's ongoing at the minute. The C92 from the A1 across to Leamington Bank, and the much delayed works at Dennick Lane. Away from the surfacing side, the team continue to deliver a wide range of schemes, including Berwick Leisure Centre access, which seems to have been going on forever, but the removal of the ford at Coldgate near Wooler, a new footpath near Alnwick Football Ground, and the Berwick Quay Walls car park. On the routine day-to-day stuff, the response gangs and highways inspectors are dealing with the routine maintenance of potholes, blocked gullies, damaged signs, faded road markings, and all manner of other complaints. Just finally, winter services, obviously right on top of we now. But I think I've seen the agenda. I think there's a briefing on that, is there? So I'll not go into that too much. So that's just a brief update. If anybody's got any questions, I'm happy to
Yes,
answer.
we have got these windows fully closed, and we are found some really quite obtrusive. Let's see what they are. Let's do our best. I can't actually do anything about it. Yes, Councillor Hill.
Thank you. I've passed on an appreciation of myself and residents, but it's worth saying again what a fantastic job you've done at Main Street and the Cow Road section. So thank you for that. Just two things. We mentioned at the LTP, myself and Isabel, briefing, if we could have a detailed update on the leisure centre, because we're getting loads of questions from residents, exactly what the scheme is, what expected completion date and so on, because I'm getting questions every day, I know Isabel is, and it's just to be able to answer them. And I think a lot of residents don't appreciate this extent of the work, so they're just seeing this disruption without, and I know it is extensive and expensive, so that would be great. And the final thing is a kind of general point and a specific one as well. Following the work at Main Street and Cow Road, and there's one or two other areas, I've got line markings needed to be done, and I'm never quite sure. I mentioned it to you and John, and I think you pass it on, but like, who's the best person to contact? Just these are the lines that need marks. It kind of is done all together rather than coming back.
Just if you just send them to me, Georgie, I'll pass them on.
Great.
It's not the best time of year to be line marking, to be honest.
Right.
But if there's anything critical, we can have a look at it.
'Cause I know, I mean, there's some replacement lines, and then the roundabout at the new bridge, the Tweedmouth side of the new bridge, and that's quite dangerous if it's completely faded almost. So it's just good to see, because I know when they're there, they might as well do as much as they can in one day, and rather than coming back. So I'll send you the complete list.
Send me a list.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Thorne.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd just like to thank Graham and his team for the excellent work done at Swollen Mill, resurfacing the roads and putting the new drains in. It's transformed that little stretch of sort of country lane, so very, very grateful for that. But I would also like to mention there's a patch sort of north of Swollen Fence Farm that, you know, is in a bad state of repair, and if we could look at that in the future. Again, another request, this is the Ely Half Road leading down to Ely Half Farm at Long Framlington. You know, this is a road where the owners of the farm have put a lot of planings, chippings into the road in the past. But again, you know, because it's been done by themselves, it really needs a proper job doing now before the road gets any worse. I've been down there, and you know, the road is not in a good state of repair. I know Graham has got this on his tannoy, so he is looking into it. And finally, you know, I would just like to thank Graham and his team for the bus shelter at Shilbottle, which has taken a long time to deliver, but we've got there in the end. We had an official opening with the cutting of the ribbon and the parish council in attendance. But, you know, since that time, only 4 weeks in, you know, I'm very sad to report that there's been some vandalism already at the bus shelter, and, you know, I don't know who's done it, but someone has actually burnt a hole in the perspex, you know, which is really annoying because we've been waiting for this sort of facility for a long time, and now that it's come, you know, someone in Shilbottle has defaced it. And I was just wondering if Graham and his team might have a look at the bus shelter just south of St James's Church, and is there anything we can do to sort of repair the little hole that, you know, someone has burnt in the perspex. But, you know, generally, you know, very grateful, not just in my own patch, but as you drive around Northumberland now, we are tackling a lot of roads that haven't been tackled for a long, long time. I'm very grateful, and I do feel generally the maintenance of our rural roads has never been as good. So thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, did you want to answer that, Graham?
Just touching on Elyhoff, Trevor. I know all about it. I've been out to meet Lee Hensel, but to be fair, it's not something I can influence particularly. It's with Dale and Andy Craig. I think it's on the list, but whether it makes the final list for next year is another matter.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hunter.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Councillor Hill's covered the first point I was going to raise. Etal Road, I know it's not county that's been doing that. I think it's Northern Power Grid.
Yeah.
Just wondering how much longer they're actually going to be on there, because a lot of people trying to avoid the roadworks on Sunnyside is actually cutting through onto that road, and they seem to have been there all summer. And
Have you had a look on the One
I
Network site?
I haven't had a look to try and get an update on it, because it doesn't seem to be very clear as to exactly what's happening. And I know it's down on the verges, but there seem to, you know, machines are going up and down the roads, and there's been traffic lights there, and it just seems to have been forever.
I'll just see if I can get it up while we're sitting here.
And it just, as I say, it'd be handy, and hopefully they reinstate everything to a good standard, because on the grass verges and that, otherwise Bob's team is going to have to try and pick that up for the grass cutting next year.
Oh, it just so happens, 2 seconds, just so happens it's the one I've got open. It says, no, it doesn't say it. Sorry, it doesn't say it. I'll try and find out from Streetworks.
No problem, thank you.
Thanks, any others? Can I just say I understand that, Graham, that the proposal to install the funded and approved zebra crossing outside the co-op along Victoria Terrace, Nanick, is yet again postponed. I learned this morning for reasons linked to the fact they feel they can't guarantee that it won't impact directly on the Christmas, 2 weeks before Christmas. If bad weather delays it, then I'm told it would impact very adversely on a busy street at a bad time. So I've accepted, well, it's not my decision now, I've accepted and informed the public as far as I can on social media that this is postponed, but definitely will occur. I'm just going to ask, can this be as early as possible in the new year, please?
I think the co-op raise objections, I think I'm right.
They did, and I sent them on, to be fair.
Yes.
Of course, they don't want it at all.
Do they not?
No, they don't, because everybody parks on the pavement. And of course, when the crossing's there, there'll be no parking, X number of metres either side, so that will impact. because people, as you know, don't like to pay and they don't like to walk.
Yes.
But that's going to have to happen, and that's the way it is, and that decision's made.
I'm sure it's programmed early January.
That'd be super, thank you. And by the way, the excellence of the job along Blakenall Road, I didn't say it because that's where I live. It's one of the best pieces of resurfacing I've seen, which has been commented upon by the residents of Swansfield Park Road. So that's going to be high up on the list, I hope. Thank you. Sorry, yes, Gav.
Thanks, Graham. Just a small one that's been raised by Addiston and Lucca Parish Council and Tilside Parish Council, because we're not sure where the boundary is, but there's a collapsed Cundy mark on the way between sort of the Bells Hill to Chatton Road.
Okay.
Along there. It's in one of the parish boundaries, but we're not sure which one it is.
Okay. If I can't find it, I'll come back here.
No more questions? Thank you. Thanks very much, Graham. Bob?
Yeah, thanks. Grass cutting, grounds maintenance, brief update. We'll be keeping on cutting the grass until the surface becomes too wet. There's areas where we would like another cut on, but it's a little bit soggy at the moment. But it's still under review. We aim to bring a stop to the point where we're going to cause too much damage. It's not worth it. We've been to some challenging periods this year, due to near perfect growing conditions. We've had a spell of very warm weather and wet conditions again. Teams recovered well and ended the season with the grass at the standard we would expect. We finished the season on cuts 12 and 13, which was a good effort. In all areas, we achieved the core cuts, and additional cuts have been achieved where the parish and town councils have requested that. Street sweeping, we're currently working on leaf hotspot areas in an attempt to prevent localised flooding. If there is any areas where you want us to attain, please let us know. We'll divert the sweeper there just to keep the gullies free and everything running well. Winter Works programme is about to start. We're happy to attend any areas of concern that the councillors may have and carry out a walkabout, look at what we can carry out, where we can carry out any enhancements. It's always, we'll carry out core works first, and then we'll move on to a prioritised list of work where we can achieve any enhancements, anything over and above what we're programmed to do. It's difficult, but we always attempt to focus on any additional spots that we may have missed the previous years through localised knowledge. Winter Works is we try and plough as much into that as we possibly can. On the waste side, other than a few minor vehicle breakdowns and staffing shortages and COVID restrictions, residual recycling and garden waste collections services are all working well. Garden waste collections will come in will come to an end soon, around about the end of November, beginning of December, depending on which way the collections fall. Income from the garden waste has exceeded our target. Income from the commercial waste and bulk collections have also exceeded targets due to an excellent recovery following the initial impact caused by COVID restrictions. Teams will continue to review existing collection rounds in order to cope with ongoing housing growth, as well as continued growth in the take-up of the garden waste service, because it's been very successful. Curbside glass recycling scheme trial has been extended by a further 12 months to help us gather more data on the volumes collected, service and efficiency, and participation rates. A small number of additional properties have been added to the scheme in each area to improve the data, and we're currently analysing that. The scheme is operated in areas of Beddleton, Alnwick, Lesbury, Hexham and Morpeth, and the residents have been advised and asked to present the glass bin for collection on a monthly basis. The scheme is for glass bottles and jars only. Some really excellent news from the ground side is that Northumberland gained 11 Green Flag Awards for our parks. A really good effort by all involved in a particularly difficult year. And that's about it, Chair.
Thanks, Bob. Are there any questions for local services? Councillor Thorne?
Yes. Just
Chairman, I'd like to thank the team for the grass cutting and the leaf clearing, you know, in my own patch. But I would like to set a date for a site visit to the cemetery. We talked about it the last meeting.
Yeah.
So I will email you. You know, on a positive front, the church seems to be taking a much more active interest now in the cemetery, trying to get together an environmental scheme where we can, you know, keep the cemetery sort of, you know, looking tidy and under control long term. So, you know, I'm very pleased that they're getting on board with that. But thank you.
That's right. We've just, I don't know if you're aware, we've just renewed the footpath, the large footpath in the Felton cemetery. It's looking well. It's just been completed last
Well,
week.
Felton Cemetery always looks immaculate. I'm very jealous. But so does the one around St Mary's Church. It's just, you know, the cemetery around the village green that I sort of struggle with. It seems to get left behind a little bit. But thanks for all
It
your
would be
efforts.
good to meet you on site. And go through
I
that
would look
job.
forward to that, sir.
Thank you, Trevor. Councillor Hardy?
Just to pass on my thanks and the thanks of Holy Island Parish Council to Bob and his team for the response to the request for cleaning leaves and a general tidy up on Holy Island. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Noted. Good. Thank you. Councillor Hill?
It's just on the point of recycling services, because recently I've been aware, I have emailed in about this, of other local authorities having a plastic recycling service, and obviously the administration is jumping up and down saying they're the greenest thing since Greta, you know. And we obviously don't have that, and then residents noticed that, was it the glass one that was being rolled out in Annex? So just from, well, generally, but from a Berwick point of view, what is the likelihood of more recycling facilities that are now, there's going to be more and more questions about this?
Yeah. The trade fair has been a real success, Georgie. We're collecting even more glass than the modelling suggested. We've extended it to improve the data we're collecting in terms of presentation rates and yields, so that we can design an efficient service for the whole county. We're waiting to find out if the direction of government goes ahead regarding the collection of glass and other recycled items, with the environmental bill completes its journey through Parliament. But it's looking almost certain that the collection of glass at curbside will become a statutory service. The government are strongly indicating that the additional costs will be covered by a new burdens funding. If we roll out the service county-wide now, this would be a significant cost to us, to the council and taxpayers, whereas we wait till central government, they'll cover the cost. So we're getting more data from what we've got, and more robust data, rolling out a further 12 months with extending the properties we've got, and then it's more than likely to go county-wide.
Yeah, so we're waiting for the government to fund it.
And obviously, somewhere like Northumberland, sparsely populated, would be a lot more expensive than for something like a plastic.
So we've got to make sure we've got the cost right, and we get as much as we can from some government.
Yeah, no.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Now, this might be my fault for not having it clear. We've got in front of us next the Winter Service Preparedness and Resilience Report. It's a report. Was there going to be any kind of presentation, or is it just to take questions? How is this to be handled? I sort of half expected a presentation, but actually it's down as a report, isn't it?
The reports were attached to the agenda.
So the report's attached to the agenda.
It might just be to note.
I think all I can ask you to do is to note that report, and if there are any questions that arise from it, to actually refer them, those points, to Rob Murphy, who is the author. Can I ask you to do that? I sort of half assumed that this was going to be a presentation, but I'm wrong. It's a report to be noted.
I've not been told that, Gordon. I've not been told that there was a presentation.
No, that was probably a wrong assumption on my part, Graham. It looks as though I've got that wrong. Yes, Councillor Hill.
It's just I'd heard something about a new IT system or something that's having teething problems. I haven't heard anything about this before, but there was some talk that there's, like often, there's some new technology service that's going to be really helpful, but it's only helpful if it works. And it's, can you expand any more on that?
I don't
My
know,
whisper.
I don't know, Georgie. I
Right,
presume it can only be the system that automatically turns the gritting on and off. I presume. I don't know. Oh,
I think,
the best person to ask would probably be Chris Westerby.
thank you. Can I ask, therefore, for the sake of progress, that we note this report?
Agreed, Chair.
Item 7, thank you. We can then press on, and I now welcome, I would nearly said Highways England, didn't I? Because you're not Highways England anymore. You're actually National Highways, yes? The name change again. Am I right? And would you like to introduce yourself, please?
You are right. You are right. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's just as hard for us to remember at the moment, so
Right.
you've done very
You've got
well
the
there.
floor.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much for inviting us along today. Does seem a very long time since I met some of you previously in 2019 when I came to give you an update on the progress of the scheme. But we're here today. I'm very thankful to be so. Thank you. Just by way of introduction, my name is Mark Stoneman. I'm the National Highways Project Manager for the A1 in Northumberland scheme. That is the scheme that runs from Morpeth to Ellingham. And Stuart.
Stuart Colley, I'm the Community Relations Manager for Costain Jacobs Partnership, who will be delivering on behalf of National Highways.
Thank you. So, just by way of a scheme overview, and perhaps a bit of a memory jog for us, the scheme is split up into two sections. We have the Morpeth to Felton section and the Alnwick to Ellingham section. The Morpeth to Felton section is roughly 12.6 kilometres, of which 6.1 of that will be new offline dual carriageway, which will mean a current section of the A1 will be detrunked and handed back to Northumberland County Council as local road. There are 5 bridges, which will be grade separated junctions. The biggest significant structure on that section of the scheme is a new southbound bridge over the River Coquette, which is a 250-metre span bridge, which has some significant engineering challenges, I'm sure you can all appreciate, from the lay of the land in that particular location. One of the key guiding principles of the scheme will be that we are removing direct access from the A1. So a number of properties, landowners, agricultural users currently have direct access on and off of the A1. We will be removing all of those, and we'll be providing new private means of access for all of those landowners and residents to be able to access the A1 from the safely provided grade separated junctions that we'll be putting on the scheme. So there will no longer be a need for large tractors, large articulated vehicles to be pulling on to the A1 in front of people and potentially causing that slowing of traffic and that risk and that danger to the public travelling on the road. The Alnwick to Ellingham section is obviously 8 kilometres long. We are providing one new grade separated junction and one accommodation bridge crossing that will accommodate, both of those structures will accommodate the needs of walkers, horse riders and cyclists in the area, so they will be equipped with equestrian parapets to allow horses to safely move over without being scared of seeing vehicles moving. The Alnwick to Ellingham section in particular has a number of public rights of way that cross-sect east to west or west to east. So we're improving connectivity there by taking people off of the at-grade junctions at the moment, so they're not having to cross the road and for traffic. They'll be able to cross safely by means of the structures that we're putting into place. And there are a number of new and extended culverts that we need to do. There are a large number of culverts that cross east to west under the A1, all the way up the A1. We are extending those, and then of course what comes with that is the need for us to ensure that we are mitigating for wildlife and any other species that may well use those culverts, be it from otters, greater crested newts, voles, anything that uses those. We have to take that into account as well. So there will be quite a significant amount of habitat mitigation going in along with those. So current progress. So we submitted our development consent order to the planning inspectorate in July 2020. We went through public examination from January to July this year. I think it was a successful examination process for the scheme. We received questions in the areas we expected to receive questions, given the size of the scheme, the potential environmental impacts of the scheme in the area. we're taking a significant amount of land from interested parties, so there are a number of impacted parties along the scheme. So, you know, we receive questions throughout the examination process from both the examining authority, from Northumberland County Council, from our statutory bodies such as the Environment Agency and Natural England, and also from those individuals that are directly impacted by the scheme as well, and we've provided responses to all of those. We have been out and about on site undertaking a number of surveys. We have just finished doing some circa 900 archaeological trial trenches. We have thankfully not found too much, but it's a double-edged sword. Whilst we might like to find something interesting, we kind of really don't want to as well, because we don't want it to hold things up. So we found some Saxon pottery, I think, but nothing that got anybody particularly excited. So that's good for us at the moment, that's managed to move forward. We've also been further updating our environment and species surveys as well. We are now busy working with our partners at Costain, working through detailed design as we get ready for start of works in summer 22. So this is a very, very busy time for the scheme now, whilst we finalise the design down to the very finite details and ensure that we comply with all the necessary standards and get through the appropriate safety governance that we're required to do to allow us to start works on site. And we have a large amount of ongoing engagement with landowners. Clearly, we need to make sure that all of our landowners are aware of when we're coming to site, what we're going to be doing, and we have a number of accommodation works that we need to agree with them so that we can allow businesses and their livelihoods to carry on going whilst we're busy in construction. So what's next? So we expect to receive our Secretary of State decision on our planning application in January 22. We then look to start works in summer of 22. We have an open for traffic date of 24-25. So at the moment, our predicted open for traffic is late 24 at this moment in time. So a very busy period now going through the winter in preparation for that Secretary of State decision and to allow us to start work. So we wanted to touch on planned engagement. As we've said a number of times, we are preparing to start construction now. So engagement is one of the key areas for us now. We are going to be working in this area for 3 years. We're going to be neighbours with many, many people working up and down this scheme for a 3-year period. And it's really, really important that we engage with all of the impacted parties and landowners and residents of the scheme, yourselves as council representatives, and of course Northumberland County Council, to ensure that everybody is informed and given all of the information that they need to understand the works, how we're going to conduct the works, where we're going to start, where we're going to finish, how we're going to do traffic management, when are we going to close the A1 and what will that look like if we need to close it to do works, how will we divert traffic off the A1 safely. So there's a huge amount of information that we need to get across to yourselves and also to the various residents of all the parishes. So before we start construction, we will have a number of pre-construction events where we will be able to show people plans of the scheme. We will have 3D videos and some VR videos that we can use to really guide people through the scheme so they can see exactly what the finished scheme is going to be like, how you would move up and down it, how you can come on and off the junctions to be able to get to your village or your property. It's something that we did with the Alnwick to Ellingham consultation that was really well received, that when people asked, when I'm travelling northbound, how do I go east? We were able to show people how they drive physically over the junction to get to their village. So it was really, really useful, and we want to continue to do that. So as part of that, there'll probably be a number of targeted events that we want to try and run. We're acutely aware that the section we're working on is a hugely agricultural area, and a lot of harvest movements are requiring to move east to west and west to east at particular key times of the year. So we need to do a huge amount of engagement there to understand those movements so that we don't get in the way, and we try to facilitate those agricultural movements to not cause those problems. And we are aware that, as I mentioned, we're building a very large bridge at the River Coquette. In order to do that, we do need to do some work in the River Coquette Valley, which we're aware is a woodland. There is a site of special scientific interest at both the woodland and the watercourse. So in conjunction with Natural England and the Environment Agency, we need to do some very careful communication with the residents in the area to talk to them about what we're going to be doing in the area, how we're going to change the area whilst we build the bridge and what that's going to look like. Because we don't want people to see the shock factor when we start to remove trees that we need to in order to build this scheme. So there's a lot of engagement that we need to do up front to make sure that everybody is as positive about the scheme as they can be, but equally we've listened to the concerns of the local area. So when we start works, we will have a start of work ceremony, as is tradition when these major schemes start. As I mentioned, their continued engagement. We will obviously utilise our website, social media and newsletters as much as possible. We've always been aware on the scheme that we need to be very mindful that not everybody has social media, not everybody has great access to the internet. So we've always been very mindful of trying to, whilst we digitalise everything, trying to make sure that things are available in paper as well, because many people do prefer to have a paper copy of the information that's available. And obviously make sure that we engage through the community. You know, we will be based in the area. We will have a depot based very near Felton, so we will actively be in the area. We will be contactable. We will have a presence. We can come to parish meetings. We can come to council meetings. We will be here to provide updates and speak to people if they need to speak to us. But also we want to engage with the communities in terms of engagement projects that we can become involved with and social value. A big part of the scheme, we do want to leave a legacy. We want to leave a positive legacy. So we do want to engage with local parishes and community groups around how we can help what else we can do whilst we're in the area, what our services can help provide. You know, we've got a huge amount of manpower and equipment in the area that we can potentially utilise for local projects that we may well be able to help with. We have had projects in the past where we've helped with play areas, with replanting areas, with spare excess materials that we've got can be used to help further develop projects in local areas. So we are just starting to engage with parishes in the local area now to see what we can do. And obviously we'll be trying to seek further engagement about that as we get closer to a start of works. So in terms of further information and keeping up to date with progress, the easiest place is our scheme webpage. Whilst I've just said about digitalising and keeping things in paper, the easiest place is our scheme webpage. That is the best place to be able to be kept up to date. Equally, the Planning Inspectorate website is very useful as well. All of the information about the scheme is kept there as well, and the current stage of process that the application is going through. We do have a customer contact telephone number, and we do have a scheme inbox, which is the Ewn in Northumberland at highwaysengland.co.uk, which comes straight through to the project team for any queries and questions, and we can pick those up and provide a response. Stuart, if you had anything you'd like to add?
I think the only thing to sort of stress is that we are there to sort of bring positivity to the area, not only in terms of the actual improvements that we've made to the A1, but also sort of the experience that Costain have got in terms of adding that social value element. So if anyone's got any suggestions, by all means sort of use the contact details, share them with us, and we'll more than happy to help where we can.
Are you now opening?
Yep, absolutely.
Questions?
If anybody has any questions.
Right, okay, this is, I will come to you, I guess from the chair, the first one, because this is the most major project the county will have seen in my lifetime, I suspect, in terms of its cost and implications. So it's a big scheme, and the public are, of course, understandably sceptical about having had decades of indications that there might be. We're now getting there. And there's one question I've got, which is the main one, really. You mentioned that the Secretary of State has to make a decision, which will be in January. And is that based on the national planning scenario or requirement, or is that simply the Secretary's decision based on the whole picture in front of him as to whether it should go ahead or not? Because I thought the decision in principle had been made. I'm a little curious as to what decision or what latitude the Secretary of State might have, and in what circumstances he might say no, if there are any.
So, yeah, so the DCO process, following the conclusion of public examination in July, the Planning Inspectorate then has a 3-month window to make their recommendation to the Secretary of State.
Right.
We don't see that recommendation. Nobody does. It goes to the Secretary of State and his team. The Secretary of State then has a 3-month period in order for him and obviously his team to make their decision based upon the recommendation that's been put before him by the planning inspector and the evidence that he has in front of him. So that's the process. We have just received, we received 2 weeks ago questions from the Secretary of State asking for some additional information on the scheme. He wanted an update on some various areas, which we provided on Friday the 12th of November. That went back, that was the deadline. So that's then given him and his team more information to be able to make that decision. So the ultimate decision on whether a development consent order application is permitted to go ahead comes from the Secretary of State. And hopefully that's what we'll receive in January.
Yes, I think we all hope that. Very interesting. Thank you very much. Councillor Thorne, I think you had your hand up first, and Councillor Patterson next.
Yes. Good afternoon. Yes, I represent Felton and Long Framlington areas. You know, really delighted that, you know, we are moving on with this. Obviously, you know, the local residents asking all the time, you know, when it's about to start. Obviously, you're doing some explanatory works at the minute, and I know we're having traffic occasionally diverted through Felton when you're examining the bridge, that sort of thing. But, you know, what I would say is that local engagement is crucial, so important. And, you know, again, I really appreciate any information you can give me as local councillor, because, you know, big sort of planning projects, construction projects, it's all about knowledge of knowing what's happening and when it's going to happen. So really appreciate that. You know, one of my other slight concerns is the diversion of traffic, and obviously living in Long Framlington and on the A697 road, we expect traffic to be diverted onto that. But one request I have, you're talking about sort of social benefit, is the possibility of maybe installing pedestrian crossing in Long Framlington. Long Horsley has one at the moment. Long Fram hasn't. It's something the parish council have been campaigning for a long, long time. You know, the A697 is busier and busier. We're building a huge amount of houses in Long Framlington. 300, I think 150 are being built, 150 still to be built. And obviously, you know, that adds into the equation to potential disruption with the house building getting in the way of the diversion of traffic. But, you know, again, keeping us up to date on that. But, you know, I do think a road crossing in Long Framlington, just enabling the villagers to get across that busy road, would be a social benefit that was really warmly received. But thank you, and look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Do you want to answer that in any way?
Yeah, so just to pick up on, we had a really good session this morning, actually, with some of the parish councils from the Felton area. We're aware that they've obviously experienced some challenges with traffic diversions that we've done recently because of the bridge surveying equipment we've needed to install. And we obviously took some actions in conjunction with Councillor Sanderson to look at what we could do to try and reduce the impact there. And we had a really good session this morning about how we can further develop that to try and reduce the impact of diversions through there. We also talked about the fact that we don't want to close the A1. It really is the last thing we want to do. We will have a more detailed construction plan and traffic management plan that we will come and talk to you and the local parish councillors about, so they're much more informed about when we're going to do closures and durations. But one of the key things is that potentially at the start of the scheme, particularly for Felton, it'll feel a little bit more intensive for the first 3 months of the scheme, while we need to do quite an amount of work around the River Coker area. But then we'll effectively go away from Felton for quite a long time, and we'll do diversions that are further south that will take traffic away from Felton. So as those plans become more developed, we'll be able to come out and talk with all the impacted villages so that they are aware of what, when and how that will happen, and what, for us to understand what we need to try and put in place to reassure residents. In terms of pedestrian crossings, and ideas. Stuart is the person at the moment that's collecting those ideas, so we absolutely welcome that this is the kind of thing we're now trying to really pick up on, so that we can start to plan and look at what are we able to engage with and deliver within the communities that we're working with over the next 3 years.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Good, thank you.
Look forward to chatting to you, Stuart.
Yes. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a couple of things. I did hear that you were going to start work at both ends of the A1 together. Is that true?
It is true. We will be working on both sections of the A1 at the same time.
Excellent. Can we have a copy of that presentation?
You certainly can. That's not a problem at all.
And I did hear and looked at the plans at the Rock Kristen Bank turn, which is near Ellingham. I'm just wondering, a flyover, is that still in place?
The Rock.
Kristen Bank turn off the A1.
Okay. So is that the at Charlton, South Charlton?
South Charlton.
Yes.
Yep. Okay,
Yes.
there we go. Yes, it is. It is. So the principle of the scheme is that all of the junctions we're putting in are all grade separated. So yes, there'll be a flyover that goes over the top.
Interesting. At the moment, we have to go left to go right because we
Yes, you
can't
do.
get out.
Yes,
So it
yes.
would be marvellous.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one of the guiding principles of the scheme, is to remove that what we call that at grade crossing. You know, it's dangerous for motorised vehicle users. It's also dangerous for non-vehicle motorised users. A number of cyclists and horse riders have told us how far they will go out of their way to avoid having to use that junction to then come back. So the junction that we put in place will obviously account for vehicular traffic, agricultural traffic, but it will also allow what we would class as non-motorised users, so walkers, riders, cyclists, to be able to freely and safely move east to west over the A1 as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Patterson. By the way, in respect of one of those questions, we do have copies of this presentation here. Do take one away with you
Oh,
before you
brilliant.
go.
That's
Thank
fine.
you.
Yes.
And we next have Councillor Hunter.
Thank you, Chair. It's on about the diversions when you have to close it. I know you're saying that you're not going to try and do it much, but there will be certain points as to whether you can have signage at good strategic locations, clear signage to say that that road is closed, because it could divert the traffic onto the best possible roads, which I know will probably end up being Trevor's 697. But it's a case, if not, you're going to have HGVs and that using sat-navs, and we're going to end up with large wagons on very narrow roads, and if they start meeting traffic, then you're going to have bigger problems. But it's that clear signage, because often the signage is on the road and people are not sure as to, is it closed, is it not closed, will I just get through? It's just that clear, simple message.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked this morning about learnings from the A30 scheme down in Devon that's been delivered. And one of the big learnings there is the need to tackle sat-nav usage. We have strategic diversion routes set up for Northumberland should we need to close the A1, and those are the routes we intend to use, where we can capture traffic at Berwick. We're talking to Transport Scotland about how we capture traffic up further north to try and do diversions there. Equally, we will be talking to our colleagues further down south at where we can capture before the M62, for example, so that we can really try to give HGV drivers in particular as much advance warning to make that choice, whether they do want to carry on further or actually go in a completely different direction. So that's how far we try to look in terms of trying to mitigate the impact of traffic. And yes, sat-nav is a particular focus area that we need to try and really reinforce whilst we're putting people on a diversion route. Follow our signs, ignore your sat-nav, particularly HGV drivers. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Hill.
Thank you. I think my point is probably very predictable. It's probably a general truism to say that the further north you are, the less likely you are to get transport funding. You've just seen an hour ago it was confirmed that Leeds isn't going to get the HS2, and they say the north's been let down. And as we all know, Leeds isn't even in the north. North was never part of it. So I'm talking about the real north and our patch, the Berwick-upon-Tweed area. And residents obviously are hearing all this going on, and we're not getting duelling. Is there any reason at all for any... I know you might say the question isn't really for you, but from your point of view, is there any hope at all about the very real north being included in this project?
Okay, I think you might have asked me the same question last time.
You were at Berwick as well, so you got
Yes, it was at Berwick. I remember it very well. Yeah, obviously, I'm the project manager for the A1 in Northumberland scheme, so that is my remit. I'm here to deliver that scheme, and the scope of that scheme is clearly set out and defined. Aware that the government have made comments around dualling to the Scottish border. Those comments were made in June, July last year. And obviously, if that is for the government to communicate with Department for Transport in terms of trying to make that happen. National Highways, Department for Transport are our client. So if the government talk and they want to dual to the Scottish border, they'll come to us and say, make it happen, and we'll do exactly what we need to do to make that happen. So, I think everybody is just waiting for the formalities and for it to happen. But obviously, I can't, in my position, kind of commit that's something that is happening at the moment.
Can I just add, in your experience, is there any conversations happening with Scotland? Because it seems to me, and this happens across the board in so many areas, that there's a lack of communication and cooperation cross-border. Because I know they always said that the case why it didn't go as far north was to do with like distance to Newcastle. They were sort of saying, oh, well, Alnwick and all these other places nearer to Newcastle, well, we're very near to Edinburgh. But it just seems that it's almost like thinking the business plan and where the traits like there's the iron border, they're not thinking. So do you know if there's been any conversations with counterparts the other side?
At my level within the National Highways organisation, it's not something that I would be made aware of those discussions been happening, unfortunately, so it's not something I'll be able to comment on.
Thank you. Are there any other, I wish that Councillor Renner Thompson, sorry, you did it.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, as someone who represents north of Brownieside, nothing would make me happier than to see the A1 duelled all the way up to Berwick, but I think that's for the next stage of this project, and the Prime Minister's been quite clear as part of his sort of union connectivity that he's quite keen to see it duelled all the way, so we'll just fingers crossed. But I was going to ask about the further upgrades north. Well, there are two questions actually. There was further upgrades to be done on the single carriage part of the dual carriageway, various junction improvements and lining. Is that all complete now? I mean, there's one junction in particular, which is the turn off to Holy Island, where we often see problems, especially in the summer, where the traffic is backed down to the island and people can't get on and off because it's awkward, and the petrol stations in the way. That would be something that we would appreciate being looked at. And the other one's about local suppliers and local materials being used. I have two quarries in Belford, and we're often told that one of the reasons one of those quarries is being kept open is so they can take stone out of there for the A1 duelling. Is there any merit to those rumours, or do you just source materials from anywhere in the country?
Okay, so in terms of the junction improvements north of Ellingham, we delivered 11 junction improvements north of Ellingham. All of those were completed by March 2020. Yes, we have completed that programme of junction improvements that we were delivering as part of this scheme. That's not to say that I can't take away the concerns that you've raised about that particular junction. I can take those back to our operations delivery team and ask them to have a look at that. So I can commit to doing that. That's no problem. But yeah, at the moment we have delivered all of the junction improvements that were within our scope to deliver with this scheme. With regards to sourcing of local materials, so Costain are our building contractor for this project. They have held a number of events earlier, back end of 2019 and during last year, where they were engaging with local suppliers, not just within this area, but within the northeast, to engage with suppliers around exactly quarried stone, labour, drainage, all sorts of transport. So there have been engagement events. So it may well be that the quarries may well have attended one of those events and engaged with Costain Jacobs in that way. But there are other ways that we have been engaging locally and will continue to do so, which Stuart can probably comment on a bit more than myself.
Yeah, I think in terms of sort of when you're looking at the major suppliers, so we'll use a specific list of sort of approved suppliers, but where they will get their materials in terms of sort of the stone, the quarry, that sort of thing, we would sort of do a lot of work sort of pre sort of award to try and just direct them to those locations. Yeah.
it falls into a wider strategy around terms of where we have a major project in the area and we want to invest in the area in terms of utilising local resources as much as possible. It's also important from a climate and a carbon perspective that we, as everybody is, but particularly with a major project, we are being challenged very hard on reducing our carbon footprint, and an easy way of doing that is to use local resources, because we're not therefore not travelling large quantities of material from further afield. So there's a number of reasons why it's the right thing for us to do.
Thank you. Councillor Mather.
Thanks, Chair. It was just to echo Councillor Thorne's comments about the A697. We've seen the A697 get busier and busier over the years, or seems to be busier, especially if there is a diversion off the A1. Does this works have any safety precautions they're going to put in on the A697, like speed monitoring, or would you be interested in doing a joint funding for average speed cameras to go onto small villages up the A697?
So aware that the A697 is one of the major roads in the area that we would look to use when we do diversions. Road closure diversions will mainly be done on a night time. We won't do closures during the day. In terms of engagement, we've recognised the need that when we've done consultation events, I know we've very much been concentrated on the corridor of the route. We recognise when we do the pre-construction engagement, we need to go out further afield on the A697 out towards the coast, thinking about feedback we've had before to let people on the wider residents know what's happening with the scheme. In terms of traffic management and the safety aspect, obviously all of the routes are agreed with NCC, and they will feed to us directly any specific safety needs that we need to consider, whether the particular village on the 697 suffers a speeding problem, or then there are things that we can do. We can use additional signage. The various stages that we can go through to get to a point where we may need to look at the potential for speed reinforcement of some manner. We do have a meeting with Northumberland Police and the joint Cameron partnership next week, where we will be discussing our needs in terms of a scheme. So that's something we can feed into them around needing their support to help try and back us up when we do these diversions.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll end with one other question. You've just said that the decision will be made in January in your engagement plan and programme with parish councils, obviously welcome to hear, but I think at that point, once we know we're going ahead, it would probably be good to engage again at parish council meetings, and might be efficient. For example, Alnwick will want to know, and so will Felton. It might be that the parish could group them into single meetings for the sake of efficiency.
Yep.
Is that something we could consider? I think the local area council could possibly handle that. So inviting, rather than you having to go around one of the dozens, each one of the dozens of parish councils and get the same questions, it might be that we could actually group them and invite you along, and you could answer the questions. Once the decision's made, there will be a concentration of interest in the matter, because it is the biggest project the county has liked to see for a long time. So I think that's something you would be prepared to do, is it, if we could organise that?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we're more than prepared to come along and present the information about how the scheme's going to work and how we're going to start construction in whichever way you feel is best that it's delivered.
I think that getting people informed locally through parish council is probably the only proper way to do it.
Yep.
It's public meetings, but that's what parish councils are for, and I think if that could be noted, we'll consider how we might organise that best. Okay, thank you very much indeed. I think that's been very interesting, and I note that I keep saying this on social media. I'm one of your best defenders in the sense that people who express doubts and raise questions about the scheme, I say there is a website. Go there, it'll tell you where we are. So I'm pleased that that's exactly what they should have been doing, and that you do actually have an email address for questions. So I hope members note that. And there is actually a copy of this presentation here for members to take away. So can I thank you both for a very interesting presentation, and hope that the Secretary of State makes the right decision in January. I think he'll hear about it if he doesn't. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for having us.
Right. And by the way, you don't have to sit through the rest of it. It's entirely up to you, but by all means do if you wish to see how we're going next. We have it an hour. If you want to pack up and check the show, have 5 minutes, and anyone need make a visit? Yes, please. Right, will do. Back by 10 past, please, at the latest. Item 9, Northumberland Communities Together. We are receiving a presentation on the work of Communities Together. Would you, ladies and gentlemen, would you introduce yourselves, please? The floor is yours.
I will. Thank you, Chair. I'm Maureen Taylor. I'm Interim Executive Director for Communities and Business Development. And thanks for the opportunity for myself, and this is Paul Brooks, who is Head of Communities Together, to talk to you and bring you up to speed with what's been going on with Communities Together work. Paul will lead this presentation, but I just wanted to take us back a little way, back to March 2020. So this didn't exist at the beginning of the pandemic, and it gives me a little bit of goosebumps to think where we were back then and how challenging the whole situation was. But Communities Together was born out of that immediate crisis and the work that we needed to do to step in to support our vulnerable residents. So Communities Together has now established itself as a service within the council. So coming from something that was an emergency response, we've actually identified that there is a need out there, and there's a process that we can put in place to ensure that our most vulnerable residents in the county can connect into the correct services to get the right kind of support. And we've engaged very, very heavily with our local community groups who've been an absolute asset through this whole 18 months. Without these community groups, we wouldn't have delivered what we've delivered. So we now have a multidisciplinary, integrated team called Northumberland Communities Together, who are working on those connections and making sure that all of our residents can have a route into the council, but also a route into the fantastic offers that are there in their local communities. And Paul will talk you through. Paul's been absolutely instrumental. He didn't realise it in March 2020 where he was going to end up, but I'm delighted that he's in this position, pulling this whole thing together. So Paul will take you through the shape of the team and our focus, and we'll cover off a couple of case studies in this presentation as well, if you have time, Chair, because I think that's some of the most powerful information that we can share with you.
Thank you.
Over to Paul.
Thank you very much, Maureen, and good afternoon, everybody. As Maureen said, I'm proud and delighted what we've achieved over the last 18 months, really, from those early days of kind of needing to work at real pace to bring a group of people together to set people, systems, processes in place to support some of our most vulnerable residents at that time. But very early on, there was a very clear direction of travel for Northumberland. We knew we would need to take an approach very different from potentially what others around the country and what neighbouring authorities were doing, that we could only really provide the level of support needed for Northumberland by working together and working with our communities and supporting communities who were often best placed to kind of step in and provide that support. So Northumberland Communities Together was never about the team, it was never about the service, it was about that culture, that ethos, about if we can come together and work together at a local place-based, in a local place-based approach, we could do so much more for our residents of Northumberland and actually get a greater understanding about what's going on in each of those communities and what we need to do to support there. So Northumberland Community Together, we haven't stepped away from that model. It's about standing shoulder to shoulder with our VCSE sector organisations, some of our statutory partners who are out there and doing this together. So kind of fundamentally, it is about connecting, strengthening and supporting adults and young people in communities to improve their health and life chances. But really, in a basic sense, it's about, can we provide that service, in a every contact kind of counts approach early on? Can we try and deal with people's needs in their communities, building that resilience, utilising the capability and capacity that exists in those communities to solve those local place kind of problems, preventing people from unnecessarily having to come into high-cost public sector statutory services, and do that in a collaborative, creative and innovative way that really does make difference to people's lives. So for a service, kind of we anchor all that we do around those kind of helping to tackle those wider determinants of health and inequalities that do exist in our communities. So, we challenge ourselves. Everything we do, we ask that question: why are we doing it, and what's that potential impact to residents and to communities? So whether it's helping trying to alleviate food poverty and food insecurities in our communities by working with partners who are in that space, who are providing emergency response, or looking to be more creative in the way that we use food surplus in Northumberland so that we can support families and households who might be in need, or working with service to identify kind of lack of provision of services or access to services in communities to come together to identify opportunities to deliver those services, or identify groups who might be able to step in and deliver that locally for their communities. And our role is kind of supporting those, not necessarily doing it as a council. As I said before, we may not be the best place, but we've got a role as a community play shaper to stand alongside, support, and help communities come together to help address some of these issues that really do exist within our community. So it's very much around that co-production and co-delivery, utilising the wonderful army of volunteers, VCS organisations, community group, mutual aid groups that exist in our communities. The kind of drawing on there, it's just really for reason of how we operate as a service. It's drawn there kind of hierarchically, I suppose, just to try and illustrate the two elements of the team from an operational and a programme delivery. But it's very much a Venn diagram. The way that we operate, both parts or all parts of the service are intrinsically linked. On the left there, you can see kind of the operational team. So this is our, if you like, the team that really are taking that place-based approach, that they're out and about. Locality coordinators are trying to identify assets that exist in those communities, whether they're organisations, whether they're individuals with specific skills or capability that might be able to support residents with a need, or whether it's an actual physical asset, a community centre or a church hall that's providing services that a wider kind of community audience could engage with and actually benefit from. Support planners kind of support individuals on a one-to-one basis. So as referrals come through the service, they're actually dealing with the need of individuals and households, identifying options and best possible referral routes, and helping develop pathways so that people can get the support that they need in their communities. As Maureen said, this is a multidisciplinary, multi-agency team, so we've been fortunate to pull staff from across other different departments who've got a wide skill set to able to provide a holistic approach to the way that we support individuals across the team. That includes our welfare assistance and support, so being able to provide advice on welfare rights, on benefits, to make sure people are getting access to the right benefits and the right level of support to help them. And make sure that we can help kind of address financial hardship and support people. We've also got staff. We host staff who are funded through the Police Crime Commissioner and the Violence Reduction Unit. Again, that allows us to do some target work where we've identified specific needs within certain communities where an element of targeted work is needed, so they sit within our team so that they can tie into that multidisciplinary approach and utilise the skills of the likes of the locality coordinator, support planners, to help them in the targeted work that they're doing with households. And more recently, the COVID support officers, again, funded in partnership with our public protection team. They sit within our team, they're hosted very much as a community support, so they're supporting the national test and trace system, so going out to make sure those people who should be isolating are isolating, or they're getting access to the support that they need to help them isolate through that period. So they've been a great addition to the team and helping out in their community. So kind of, on a day-to-day basis, helping to reduce those health inequalities and making sure people get the access to support that they want. On the other side of the team is our kind of delivery, our programme and projects. So we've been responsible for the management of the delivery hub. So in the early days, that was emergency food parcels, bridging food parcels to those vulnerable households whilst the national system kicked in and online shopping and other systems were put into place. That moved to the distribution of PPE. More lately, it's been lateral flow testing. So again, the delivery hub is a part of the service, and again, huge volumes of units of items have gone through that hub. We were fortunate to secure some funding through North of Tyne for the creation of community hubs. So we've got a programme to look at how we develop community hubs across Northumberland, which are again a different approach of making sure that we can actually utilise some of those community assets So groups come together in those shared spaces to deliver activities, interventions and solutions that the community needs. So no two community hubs will be the same. This certainly isn't about the council, you know, increasing its own estate and portfolio. Quite rightly, community hubs are already out there. Potentially they may not recognise themselves as a community hub, and it's about working with those community organisations and those assets to look at how can they bring others in with them and work through in partnership to co-produce programmes of delivery and activity that meet the needs of their community. So a huge programme of community hub investment as we go forward, and we'll hopefully see more of those. We do have the first of those opening in Cramlington, which we're extremely proud of. It's gone better than we could have imagined. There's a real diverse programme of activity in there. So kind of we want to look at doing more and more of that across the county. We also manage kind of programme delivery, and hub programme delivery isn't just about what goes in those physical buildings, but actually it's about connecting people and places, so across the town. So how do we connect a lot of activity that might be happening in a place together under a kind of a structured programme? And that really stemmed from early days of the pandemic, where we knew where some of our most vulnerable kind of residents and some of our most vulnerable kind of wards and streets were. And, you know, in the midst of lockdown, no one really had sight on those communities and those families. So we embarked on a programme of a community enrichment, which was about us going out into those communities in a very COVID safe and compliant manner, just to provide information and get people to kind of come out over the kind of the threshold of the door to engage, to make sure that they had what they needed to help them through that pandemic. And we used that as an opportunity to start to engage other partners, whether it was the local head teacher who wanted to make sure families were getting the support they need, whether it was health partners or just VCSE organisations or faith leaders in the area who wanted to touch base and support those families. So enrichment in the early day was about getting information out there, making sure people were safe and well. As kind of the restrictions eased, we used those opportunities to continue to go out into those communities, onto those streets and into those greens, and bring people out to engage in a little bit of activity. Using health trainers and other voluntary sector partners, did some kind of activities that engaged the children, engaged the families, older people, to keep them safe and well. And they were really well received. And each week, kind of people were starting to kind of, you know, from the curtain twitching to what's going on, to actually getting out into the front garden, to actually waiting for the enrichment pop-up to actually come around the corner and engage with that. A number of residents associations formed to kind of continue that work, and we're seeing, you know, now a lot of groups who have established, who are now taking that forward across their own communities, both within centres and in open spaces, continuing that programme going. So the programme bit there. We're also support our volunteers, so looking at helping to establish volunteering within some of those communities to support some of those VCS organisations, so how they can create volunteering capacity to do more in their own local area, but equally internally about how we use the workforce that we have as a council and look at supported volunteering opportunities, so staff can actually have, you know, supported days away from the workplace to go out and actually give back into their communities, and in turn how we look at that from a corporate social responsibility to get others to do similar, so that we can start to build that volunteering capacity in Northumberland and build greater community resilience. So that also sits within the service. So kind of how that operationally works, referrals are into NCT. We take a triage approach, so referrals directly into the service, they may come through a trusted partner. It may be a referral in from a VCSE organisation, or even through an individual dialing the number. We will take a triage approach to identify what is going on with that individual. So it's not about just dealing with the issue that they may present with, but actually really trying to find out what's going on with that individual's situation at that time, and what can we do collectively with our partners to really to try and make a difference to that individual's circumstance. So that might be about using kind of providing food banks for emergency food relief, but then looking at a much wider kind of offer around financial hardship and about employability and other things to make sure that we really get beneath the surface and tackle that. So obviously our locality coordinators, our support planners, welfare rights officers do that on a daily basis. Our community our community enrichment programme is really fed from some of that insight and that intelligence that comes through referrals. So why are we seeing a lot of this happening in this community? Or it might be from what our partners are telling us, or from some of the partnerships that we've now created, where we've brought like-minded VCS organisations and partners together to work on specific issues such as food poverty or financial hardship, or fuel, warmth and clothing. So kind of using that intelligence to put a programme of delivery around that actually addresses what the emergent needs are in our communities. As well as using that to kind of deliver on some of our other programmes and areas of responsibility, such as the holiday activity and food programme through the DFE scheme, to make sure that households with that eligibility are making sure that children are going along and taking advantage of that offer through the non-term time, as well as some wider universal offers that provide households with a positive experience. One thing I'm really proud of that we've done is Northumberland. Again, it's not us, it's about working in partnership with those others. We've been able to do so much more there's been quite a lot of funding that's been released over the past 18 months, which has been excellent. But we've been able to really maximise that through working in partnership with others, linking in with other grant funding that's been available in Northumberland. We've been able to do far more than just what the basic offer is. And if we take the holiday activity and food programme, that hasn't just been yes, we've had to target those on free school meals and special education needs, and we quite rightly want those families and children to engage. But we've been able to flex that and create universal offer to people who might not have that eligibility, but those families kind of, need something in those non-term times, and whether that's a family pass to Annick Garden with food, or cinema tickets for the whole family to go to the cinema and have food, or a trip to the coast and food. We've tried to do as much of that we can, so that we really do reach as many households in need as we possibly can. And again, through that collaboration and creative co-production with others. Community hubs, as I said, it will be a ever-changing landscape. We are exploring opportunities all over the county. We do have Cramlington, which is up and running. We've got Holtwhistle, an open day happening in Holtwhistle next week. We've got investment into Newbigger and Linemouth, but we are also kind of Annick with Linda's Farm Centre. We're exploring community hubs around the county, but equally more and more now engaging with community groups who are saying, actually, our centre only opens a couple of hours a week. We could be doing more. Is there any support? How do I turn it into one of these community hubs? So again, looking to kind of make sure where possible we can develop. And it won't be just one community hub for a town, village. It's about whatever the requirement is for that place. So kind of snapshot. I can't see that screen, that's quite small there, but just to basically let you kind of see what we've been doing. Obviously, as I mentioned, originally it was supporting those clinically extremely vulnerable residents and those who were on the shielded patient leads in the early days. Over 25,000 residents. That include kind of over 2,000 door knocks to make sure that those residents who we had concerns about were kept safe. But the reality is that yes, that was a cohort that we were aware of. But our vulnerability across Northumberland is much higher than that, and we've seen that. One thing that surprised us, it was when furlough kicked in, those households, 2 working parents who potentially had always kind of been fine, a real reduction in their wage, put them into a place where they'd never been before, and they were the kind of families that were struggling and were coming through were coming through the service. So kind of some of our challenges came from other areas of the county and places we may not have been expecting it. As I mentioned, we've had lots of we've been responsible for the administration and delivery of a number of government grant funded schemes, the COVID Winter Support Grant, COVID Local Support Grant. We've now got the Household Support Fund, 2.4 million, which we're managing at this moment in time, which will see us through to the 31st of March to support families through the winter. And again, as I mentioned, community enrichment programme, doing those pop-outs out and about in our communities, as well as making sure that those 11,000 children who are eligible, 9,000 children who are eligible for free school meals are getting access to that holiday activity and food programme. That's 4 hours a day, 4 hours a day for 4 days in the term time, so that they engage with some positive activity, and food is an important part of that. So quite a lot going on. If there's time, Chair, just to kind of, I suppose, put it in the context of the day in the life of the hub, I just thought I would share two little case studies. This is Bethany's name, not obviously Bethany, but this is Bethany's story, and it's a true case which happened in Cramlington. One of the members of the team was walking to work, came across a young lady who had obviously been sleeping rough on the park, was in a bit of a state, looked cold, obviously, didn't look great. Went across, had a chat to find out what was going on, where she disclosed she'd recently broken down in a relationship, had recently secured a job, and had been sleeping rough. The young lady had a black eye, so there was concerns potentially there around some kind of domestic violence and abuse. So she was coerced to come along into the community hub, and we gave her a cup of tea and gave her breakfast and opportunity to go in to freshen up and clean herself up as she was waiting to go to work. With her consent, one of the team members went with her to her employers just to kind of let them know why she was appearing, why she was, and that we were looking at supporting her, and to make sure that there was no concern from the employer, and just to look after her. While she was at work, the team kind of got in touch with the relevant housing associations to expedite some emergency accommodation for her, and also touched and connected in with a number of voluntary organisations who we often work with around securing some white goods and brown goods, so that we could make sure she had the necessary furnishings to stabilise her accommodation. Using the grants that were available, kind of got her some food and fuel to make sure that the house, she could go back to, and she had those essentials. This was a looked after child from another local area. Fortunately, it wasn't one of ours, another local authority area. Her network and all her support network was outside of county. So we purchased a mobile phone just so that she could obviously manage her own affairs, but also she could start to maintain some of that connection and make sure that kind of that isolation and loneliness wasn't going to kick in. So at very little cost to us, and we're talking nothing more than £200 really, we've kind of been able to stabilise Bethany. She pops in most days now to see the team. She's really grateful of the support that she got from Northumberland, so much so she's requested that she's asked to volunteer to give back a little bit. But she's doing really well, and she's stabilised. Had we not intervened, and for the sake of £200, she may have gone back to her own local authority area and gone back into a care system. She may have stayed in Northumberland and continued to kind of remain homeless and kind of, put herself at greater risk around exploitation or, deterioration of health. But either way, potentially the escalation of her condition could have put huge pressure on the public purse further down. So kind of, again, how the team and the community came together to support a young lady.
I think it's worth saying that was all done by the time that girl finished that shift, and she's kept her employment.
This was a referral from a councillor, actually. There was a resident who was kind of a bit quiet, recluse, didn't really engage with the community, had a long-standing health issue. The garden had become unmanageable and overgrown, and it had become a focus for fly tipping and just kind of general kind of, dropping of litter. And it also become a bit of an environmental concern because of the overgrowth. The picture to the top right is the garden, and actually the bottom right is it after clearing. The resident, because of the state of the garden, number of complaints, community discord, that they were looking at actually removing her from her tenancy, and that eviction proceedings had begun. She needed to go into hospital for a major operation, and the councillor was concerned that obviously there would be nowhere for her to come back to, and you know, while she was away, that potentially, you know, things could escalate and out of hand. So when she went into hospital, we engaged with a number of community groups in the area, and a group came together to clean the garden and do all of that, and worked with our local services to clean the garden. Provided support, so the community were aware of the situation. The community came around and kind of got themselves ready for her release from hospital, and made sure that everything was in place that she needed to stabilise her post-op, and started to connect in with her, and really just kind of started to kind of pay a little bit more attention to her. No one was aware of the situation that lady was in. They weren't aware of her long-term health conditions, and actually the severity of the operation she was going in for. The fact that the community had come together to solve that problem, you know, would just raised the community spirit. The group of gentlemen who did the garden have formed a little kind of association, and now as an enterprise offering kind of services to other older residents in the village, offering similar to help maintain gardens and upkeep of things like that. So again, at no cost to us at all, but just the ability to connect through a place-based approach with those VCS organisations to look at how do you support your own residents, your own community, and how do you build resilience. What's coming next? Just really for you, so that you're aware. Obviously, we've heard a lot on the news about escalating fuel prices, the loss of obviously UC benefits and furlough and other things. So we know that potentially the winter may be a difficult time for a number of households. So obviously, we've got the household support fund. That's 2.4 million that we've got to manage for Northumberland. We will do that through a targeted approach where we can, about identifying those vulnerable households. But again, a direct referral into the service from likes of yourselves who have that intelligence at a local level, from our VCSE partners, as well as potentially passport and money to some of our third-party organisations who are best placed to provide immediate support. But what we're going to do more proactively than that is go out into our community. So we're embarking on a series of pop-up events, winter warmers as we're calling them, where we will go into communities, we will go into to schools or in the school area to catch parents as they come out, to talk about some of those support offers that are available over the winter period, to try and reach as many of our households as we can, to let them know whether that's a cold winter payment, whether it's household support fund, whether it's engaging with a holiday activity and food programme, whether it's about one of our green schemes to improve the efficiency of the running of their homes. But just get some information out there, do some of that community engagement, and referring them on where appropriate through those pathways and to those partners who can support them. So kind of a lot of activity planned over the Christmas and through the winter to make sure that we try and engage with and meet the needs of as many people as we can. As I mentioned, we do take a place-based approach. So we have a locality coordinator who leads in each of the areas. Many of you may know Ruth Armstrong. Ruth Armstrong is the locality lead for Northumberland. Ruth actually has just secured a new role. She will continue to be the locality, she will continue to look after Northumberland, but she's actually taken on a lead coordination role in supporting the other locality coordinators. So Northumberland Communities Together, we're open kind of 7 days a week, 9 till 6, out of hours through our kind of the normal the normal call centre, and obviously one call should need to escalate those needs. There is an email as well, nct@northumberland.gov.uk. Appreciate, Chair, that's quite a romp, and I probably haven't done the service as much justice as I could, but it was just important to kind of give an update of where we are in Northumberland Community.
Thank you. It was very comprehensive, Gallop, I've got to say, and put in my mind certain things that I now realise how they fit in. One thing I was just going to ask a question from Chair, and I'll come to others who want to ask. I see a name there. I think, oh, Tracy Wilson. Now we are dealing with the issue of children's uniforms, school uniforms, and the fact, of course, a very expensive item on their household agenda. And there was a variety of sort of local schemes, some good and some not so good. And she came around and said, what we're trying to do, is that from Communities Together, that this particular initiative has come in order to try and coordinate the improved facilities that we need so that people can dispose of their old unwanted school uniforms and pick up new ones at almost no expense.
It's not, Northumberland Communities Together is helping that initiative. It's come from a number of places and others have been involved in that. So again, as we've talked about, we're looking at pathways in a sense, you know, and we know that uniform, you know, and that circular, how do we actually kind of make sure that good serviceable uniform can be exchanged and can be passed on, but equally, how can we make sure that's more affordable? Some of those higher costs is that. And there's a number of issues. And again, we are supporting VCSE organisations and groups who are interested in that to look at what might that look like for Northumberland. It may be very different from North Northumberland than what they want to do in the southeast or in the west. But we are looking at initiatives such as kind of uniform exchanges. We've had the uniform amnesty, obviously with the Household Support Fund, supporting some of those VCSE organisations who might want to, in readiness, purchase some warm winter clothes where they know that there potentially might be a need. So, again, it's not... it's always with humility, we kind of like stand back. I don't want to be saying NCT's doing it, but what we're doing is standing and hope and working with others to take initiatives like that forward across the
take
county.
It forward, yes, I see now. Thank you. Question, I saw Councillor Mather with his hand up, and Councillor Hill next, and Councillor Passett.
Thanks, Chair. It was just really to make a comment. Thank you for all the work that you're doing. We ran a COVID response group in the north rural side of Northumberland and worked alongside with Armstrong, and I really wanted to mention her because she's been an absolute fantastic support to us, you know, granting us our first £500 on kind of day one of COVID and then supporting us and getting funding after that. We've actually got our first presentation by her tomorrow to look at how we can tap into the rural areas, which potentially could be a really hard area to get services into and offer support. But it was just a comment to say thank you very much for the work you're doing, and you know, by the residents, they really appreciated the support throughout COVID.
Well, thank you very much, and I'll make sure we'll get past that on to
Thank you very much. Councillor Hill.
Yeah, I mean, on that vein, often in local government, you're in awe at how badly things are managed. I'm in awe at just how well this service works. And it just really took off with COVID. It's the sort of emergency structures in place to get right into the communities, to get processes to, I mean, with the uniform exchange, they knew, because of the COVID work, I think, exactly who to get into the community to book out that room. And, you know, could you just take over the whole council? Because you've obviously just got the... Because the amount of times we talk about systems and structures that don't work very well, and when you see something that works brilliantly, it should really be supported. I mean, on that vein, I can just see as more councils become aware of it and all that it can do, and to residents, and residents will refer there. I mean, what's the plan for resourcing? Because I just hope it doesn't come to a point where it's impossible with the current resourcing. So I presume, because you're so brilliant, you've got this in mind, but just the resourcing moving forward.
Chair, if I pick that up. Thank you, Councillor Hill. I mean, yeah, the team are incredible. They are passionate, and they were handpicked for a lot of those reasons about process and positioning and just having that kind of ethos that gets into communities. So I think we have kind of turned a little bit about what the council looks like, and I want to continue with that because it is our front of house, how people engage. In terms of the future and sustainability of that, I think it's a really important point. The team initially were brought together from different services already in the council, and it was just about that creative jigsaw puzzle that says, well, welfare rights doesn't need to sit there, it needs to sit here. And coordination in the community doesn't sit out there on a limb, it sits here. So by connecting all of those things in the council and bringing them together, it hasn't taken any huge additional resource. So from that point of view, it's recycled. We have had some additional support from Cabinet financially to make sure that we've got good management arrangements in place to make sure that that's going forward. But you'll have heard Paul mention that we also have external partners now who want to invest into NCT. So a huge amount of grant fund, which is fantastic. COVID is probably going to be with us or around us for quite a while longer. So I think that we will have that drip feed coming through for a while. But external partners like the Police and Crime Commissioner, like the National Lottery, are really engaging with us and putting posts into our current our establishment, because they want this sustained as well. So I think what we've opened up is, here's the council's offer, and we are open to other people as well. So we have a number of things in train going forward. Clinical Commissioning Group are on board about how they invest, and they are acknowledging NCT as being the potential vehicle to help them do that. So today, I'm not concerned. In the longer term, I think we need to change a lot of how we position services in the council and make them more NCT-like, if I can say that.
That's very interesting, thanks. Just on Councillor Hill's point, sometimes it takes a war to improve efficiency, doesn't it? And it's a crisis we didn't want, but actually it's brought about an improvement in efficiency because we had to. I remember when this started, our Alnwick Town Council did a good job of sort of kicking it off locally and doing it. As time's gone on, we haven't actually needed to, because the organisation, the structure itself has worked. Ruth has got it right, and we've actually found ourselves able to leave the county to get on with it through its local as I say, coordination and management. It's been really good. So you're getting deserved, positive vibes from us here because you deserve them. So thank you. Councillor Patterson.
I'm a tiny little bit biased here because Communities Together sits under my portfolio. So I'm incredibly proud of the team. I don't need to say that. I tell them all the time how proud I am of them. And actually, it worked for me. A resident came to me in some distress, and I referred to Communities Together, and they got in touch with the resident, smoothed everything out, and she was nearly in tears. She was so grateful. So I just want to say, well done, and the team's fantastic.
Excellent. Thank you, Wendy. Councillor Hardy.
Yeah, again, I would like to say thanks for what you do, and there is a great need for what you do. Over the past 18 months, I've moved along with Berwick Voluntary Forum and Northumberland Forum to be one of the panellists of the Benicia Fund. So I'm one of the people that get referrals from your good self to provide hardship funding, sometimes in excess of the £200. In fact, up to double that, and we've provided hardship grants that really have changed people's lives. But the really interesting thing is that once it's come to yourselves, once it's come to us, whether it's come from another party, the response roundabout of signposting and getting the support has been amazing. So yes, somebody needs white goods, but do they need food, the contact with the food bank? Do they need benefits, contact with the benefit services? Do they need medical assistance? That part, we've tried so long to get different organisations to run, but we end up duplicating what each other does. Where you come in as a safety net, they can bring everything together. So yes, just total admiration for what you do, and the need is there. You need to be there.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Can I just come in on something to say just back to that, is that we are very conscious, I am very conscious that, you know, the community and the community groups can make £10 go a very, very long way compared to what a council can do with it, because we are an expensive body. And I will always be, and we will always be supportive of community groups, and our job is to help facilitate that activity, not to take it over, but to connect it and facilitate it. And I think that's what's made it so successful. NCT is the glue. NCT is the invisible machine that kind of makes that community work happen and gives it, empowers it to take its place.
Absolutely, yes.
If I may, we're actually losing a key player in Northumberland in the voluntary sector owing to health conditions. Jane Pennell, who will be known to most of us here, is stepping down as chair of Northumberland, and will be a difficult lady to replace.
Thank you. Yes. Well, you're going, as we all know as councillors, is knowing who to go to get things done. That's half the battle. But when you've got one name that you know is going to go to all the other, that going to find the right place for you, hey, does it half make a difference? And it has made that difference. You know, Ruth, that's where you go, and you know it's going to be sorted. I don't have to find the food bank. She will. Sorry, Councillor Hunter, you're next.
No problem. Thank you, Chair. I think you're doing a fantastic job. It's getting to those people that's the hard to reach, the ones that are just sitting under the radar. They don't want to ask for help. They've never had to ask for help before, and maybe they feel embarrassed to come forward and ask for help. And I think it's how you try and reach them, because most of us try to signpost people to get them the help, but it's them ones that sit very quietly and they're struggling. And it's going to be a long winter. You know, we've got fuel price increases, and they're talking about possible interest rates increases. You know, it's all these ones that's maybe just been above and just been able to cope. It's how they're going to, can I say, need that help, but maybe never had it before, and it's how we can engage with them to say it's all right now to ask for help.
Thank you. Well, I think, yes, Councillor Renner Thompson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Of course, you know, Mo, I support the Northumberland communities together. I think what you did over the summer holidays when it came to the getting those the free school meal voucher information out there that we put forward was absolutely astounding. I think this is Northumberland Communities Together was around before COVID. Ruth came on the scene before COVID. I remember when Ruth came on the scene, and it was her job to gather information on all the voluntary sector in the area. That's right. And some of those organisations were going, "What's all this about? Well, how is this going to help?" And then it took COVID for them to realise that we were essentially putting the pieces together of the jigsaw, because the days of the county council providing every service under the sun are long gone. We don't have the resources to do that anymore. But what we can do, and this is part of our strategic vision, is to be the enabler of the third sector, and how we can get the third sector to work together for the benefit of all. And Northumberland Communities Together is the way of doing that, and that's the way the youth service is going to go. It's the way that everything is going to go. And if we can do it as well as these guys are doing it, then it'll work really for the whole county. But what I was going to ask, is Ruth still going to be based in Belford at Bellevue, or will she be moved on?
No, so Ruth's really, obviously, as you mentioned, the locality coordinators were already there. They were doing that asset mapping before, so it was, you know, an obvious choice to pull them into NCT at the start to help do that. Ruth, because of her role, and she's very good at it, she's secured a role as a lead coordinator, locality coordination, just so she can provide some kind of supervision, mentoring, and support over the other locality coordinators as we build that capacity. So she retains her area of responsibility and will be still working there. But from a service point of view, she'll be supporting Julie Leddy as the operational manager, with continuing to improve how we operate and support the other locality coordinators, so that everybody has a Ruth. You know, but don't get me wrong, Michelle, Tracy, Richard are great in themselves. It's just about kind of how we start to share that load.
No, that's really good. Thank you. I think you've got a very positive message from councillors, because at the very start of this, as Councillor Renner Thompson said, I saw this coming. I thought, oh goodness, I always suspect bureaucracies. Can I put it that way? This is going to be bureaucratic. This is going to be lots of a paper chase. You know, can I put it that way? That was my initial suspicion. Dead wrong. You got it right. You did what needed. Took a crisis to have it needed to be done, but you did do it, and it's been done well. And you know, you're getting quite proper recognition from councillors that you've done a good job. So well done, and thank you both. And thanks also to the names on the back here of the various localities. Excellent job. Please pass on our best wishes and full appreciation of the work that's been done.
We will do. Thank you, Chair. Can I just check that all councillors have had their information packs? Yes, so what you should have is some little tools and postcards to help you in your handbags and on your desks and in the car. Just to, if you remember that number,
Got it
if
now.
everything else fails, come through the team, we'll get you sorted.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Wonderful. I've lost my way. My glasses on. Yeah, I'm skilling us. Not long to go, not far to go. I know one of you has, Councillor Patterson, you need to go in 5 minutes. We'll probably get that through. Berwick Regeneration Project, I've kept on the agenda, but I've no updates, and unless you wish to say anything, Councillor Hill.
It's going to be, I'm not sure of the name, but I think it's going to be slightly, the Berwick Regeneration Commission is going to be slightly remodelled, so it's more mirrors the other sort of town boards and forums elsewhere.
Yes, yeah.
And obviously the new focus, despite all the other projects going on, is obviously at the coastal cultural zone or the other way around. And our first meeting of the, I don't think we've confirmed the name, but the new forum, the slightly adjusted membership, is going to be at the end of this month. So there'll be more detailed updates. And
That's
Tony
interesting.
Cussop or Rob Murphin, who's going to be leading up, will probably come and give
Thank you. That's interesting. Is there not presently a Berwick Forum?
There's not, and that's one of the reasons why we set up. I think Berwick, probably more than anywhere else, is in need of. There's always been, pulling everyone, pulling things together. Lots of different groups, almost doing the same thing or competing to do the same thing. Things aren't as coordinated in ANIC and places. So that's one of the things. Just pull it, get people around the table, and that's what we're. So there'll be more detailed updates, maybe a new, slightly different name.
Okay, thank you, because I can tell you it works in ANIC. It's the one thing you can almost establish group priorities that way. It's a way of saying this is what we do need. It really does work, and I'm pleased. I hadn't realised Berry didn't actually have one, but that's what you need. Thank you. Move on to the work programme, pages 23 to 30. I think any suggestions for new agenda items should come to me. They don't have to, you have to put them to me now. Email me, and if I think it's appropriate, they'll go on the work programme. Is that the easy way of getting through that? Thank you so much. And urgent business, is there any urgent business? There is, Councillor Anna Thomas. My God, what's happened?
When are we going back up north, Chair?
Well, you tell me. You tell me. My understanding is that there is this, where we are here, is as a decision of the Chief Executive as the head of paid service. Am I not right about that? That's my understanding, that is a decision from the top, not a political one. But it's a question. Did you not
explain that at the very beginning of the meeting?
As I thought I did, yes. He wasn't listening, was he? But my understanding that this is a Chief Executive decision. I agree with you. We want to get this back to normal as soon as we can. And the local area council review that's going on has other thoughts about making it a little easier to go to areas like Belford, Amble. What used to happen with the area committees, which had its good side, and that was one of them. But pushing planning together with the local area council has actually made it rather cumbersome, and there's a good chance, I think, if the cabinet agrees, that we will split that up. Councillor Thorne.
Yes, I would just like to back up Gavin and Thompson. There's a lot of demand and cries from our constituents to return to ANIC and Berwick.
Thank you. Well, if that's the view, and I think it probably is, what I'll do, can we make a note of this, and from the chair to the Chief Executive, please, and copy to the leader, chair and leader, that could this be brought into effect as soon as possible?
Could I just ask on the general review to clarify in terms of, I mean, I presume there's nothing on planning, there was just no planning applications.
Oh, no, it just happens to be on.
And so when you say about planning, do you mean that, so if there's an application for Belford, for example, planning application, who would decide that?
Right, I see what you mean. First, our group is not a decision-making group. One of the thoughts we've got, and we're writing up the report of the review group as I speak, but one of the thoughts, the general thoughts, I don't think I'm giving anything away, which isn't fairly obvious, is that if we were to split planning, that could be Berwick ANIC and nothing else. But the other side of the local area council could go out as the as the area committees used to smaller areas, and more likely to get parish councillors in, because we want to get them more involved, and local people in more involved. That's the thinking. But that's not the decision of the group. That will have to go to Cabinet. We'll have to go. It's a political decision, I feel, but that's the way we're thinking. Does that help? Yeah. Thank you. Wendy, you need to go.
Can I just say, in regard to coming here,
Yep.
in regard to climate change, all of us are travelling down from the north unnecessarily, I feel. And also, I particularly hate going home in the dark
Yep.
on the A1
Yep.
in rush hour traffic.
Point is taken, and you have my assurance that this will be taken up straight away. I won't wait for the minutes. They'll go straight away. Yeah, could you remind me, Rebecca, that I'm going to do that? Thanks very much indeed. Date of next meeting, as you see, is Thursday, the 23rd of December. Good grief, it's close to Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
I'll talk about that we'll discuss that, Rebecca. Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you very much, everyone. I think there's